Cheers up. I say you just upstairs.
Cheers, Nick.
Okay.
Whatever you want, board member. Actually, I'm going to.
You got some general left. I'm trying to get it swears in.
Do we have something to
Do
read?
you have the,
Yeah,
there?
tell me that, tell me that.
You got it. You got it. All the way to the right.
You don't have it, I got another, you got a couple copies. So,
Is that it?
Oh, I forgot how long this thing was. I know.
yeah.
You can take it with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Oh, you got it. Really?
No,
Okay.
yeah, that's what we have to do.
I don't remember. You guys should be nice.
Yeah, we did it. You just, because you were so excited about being on the board, you forgot it. How long it is. I looked at it and I went, oh, Lord.
Yeah.
That was really.
Very short lived.
I read verbatim every word out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you make us repeat it. So I read every word in that meeting.
No, yeah, we can all do it at the same time. Let's not everyone do it one at a time, or all three of us, all four of us do it.
Okay, state your name.
They were playing
All right.
unison.
So it's one time through, so you either have to listen to it or read it.
I'll read it. Probably have one member here.
And John is at the end.
I'm
At
sorry?
the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
We ran out of space.
I'm here. I'm here.
I know. It wasn't a contested election. I know. For anything. I quit that. You're right. You're gonna want that. But basically, it just means that people just don't really want it. Yeah, people are confused.
Do we have a The May 4th, 2021 meeting of the Woodstock Community Unit School District 200 Board of Education. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the roll call, please.
Dr. Bidwell, Dr. Ferris,
Present.
Mr. Gilmore,
Here.
Mr. Headley,
Here.
Mr. Holmuth,
Present.
Mr. Maselli, Mr. Parisi?
Here.
State of Illinois has altered provisions of the Open Meetings Act allowing boards to conduct business via electronic means and enforce limits on gathering size in accordance with CDC guidelines in regard to the COVID-19 outbreak. Check the website for in-person limitations. Masks and social distancing are required to attend the meeting. A live stream of the meeting is available on the district's website. First item tonight on our agenda is our consent agenda. There is a personnel addendum, and it's also my understanding that item number 2.4, the approval of the ISBA boilerplate agreement will be pulled. Is that correct?
We would ask the board to pull at this time. We had a board question we're working on, and then after checking on the lawyers, a couple things we want to iron out before we bring it back.
Okay, so we're going to pull item 2.4. Do any members wish to have any other items pulled from the consent agenda? Okay, so you had an opportunity. Please review the addendum and the consent agenda, and when you're ready, there is a suggested motion on the first page of our materials.
Move to waive the reading of and approve the consent agenda as printed in the board agenda, including the event, routine personnel addendum dated May 4th, 2021, and leaving out 2.4, approval of ISBE student privacy boilerplate agreement.
Second. Motion by Mr. Holmes, seconded by Mr. Parisi. Roll call, please.
Mr. Holmuth?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Headley?
Yes.
Dr. Ferris?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes. Okay, then we move into our communications. Communications are a time for community members and district employees to express a point of view, not to debate an issue. There will be a sign-up sheet for the public to identify their name, address, phone number, name of the organization you represent, if any, and a brief description of the topic to be addressed. The public can submit public comments electronically to the Board of Education through the following email address: schoolboardpubliccomments@wcusd200.org. Written comments will be read aloud at the meeting. Comments are generally limited to 3 minutes in accordance with Board Policy 2:230. In addition, comments may be limited pursuant to Board Policy and will only be accepted until the end of the public comment section of our communication. Do we have any emails?
Yeah, Kitty's got a couple.
Okay.
I sent out to you.
I'm reading this public comment on behalf of Brian Lancy. Good evening. I'm a parent of 3 students in District 200, and I'm writing today with concern and frustration with the COVID-19 protocols and the push to be vaccinated. I understand that there is a liability issue and that we need to follow the guidelines put in place by the NCHD and CDC. My concern is that the parents, students, and teachers' voices are not being heard. My child sat home for 14 days because he was near someone who tested positive for COVID 7 days prior, so his exposure was already a week in the past. The student with COVID was able to return sooner than my son, who showed no symptoms. Is this going to be the procedures for next year as well? I am seeing a very big push in our high school for vaccines, and in fact, my son was asked if he was vaccinated by a school administrator. This is totally unacceptable as my son is a minor, which is very concerning to me as his parent. This is not a mandatory vaccine and is still in a trial phase until 2023. Do we have concerns about those that will or will not be vaccinated and discrimination? Has there been consideration for psychological issues with the COVID protocols? Kids being alienated, picked on, or other concerns that may warrant issues? I hope that these are concerns that are brought up by our school board and the decision makers for the protocols in our school district. Thanks, Brian Lancy. I'm reading this public comment on behalf of Annette Friels. Good evening to you all. My apologies for not being there in person to address you, and thank you in advance for your attention. Vaccines, testing, and quarantine procedures. Number 1. The WNHS newsletter from April 30th, 2021 has the following statement, in quotes: students who are vaccinated are not required to quarantine if they are a close contact of a positive case. As more and more vaccines become available, think about having your student vaccinated, end quotes. I find this statement irresponsible, coercive, and very troubling. As parents, we should be analyzing appropriate risks versus benefits before putting a needle into their arms. Right now, we are in the middle of the biggest clinical research study in history, as all three of these vaccines are in use only due to an emergency use authorization. They are not approved as the general public thinks of an FDA approval. They are investigational product. As such, more information should be collected and more time needs to elapse so said information can be gathered regarding safety and effectiveness. For example, the first chickenpox vaccine was approved in 1995. The state of Illinois did not require it in school-aged children until 2002. This pattern is similar in all other vaccines in the past. Logically and realistically, I ask myself why the push to vaccinate our children is present when approximately 98.5% of children who contract the illness recover fully. Coercion is defined as follows, quotes, implied or expressed threats of violence or reprisal or other intimidating behavior that puts a person in immediate fear of consequences in order to compel that person to act against his or her will, end quotes. Enough said. I ask myself, where and why is this pressure building to hurry up and get vaccinated when there's so much more information known about COVID-19 now than this time last year, and the benefits and risks related to this pandemic along with the mitigation of risk is better known and can be discussed. Many policies set forth in the last 12 months by the IDPH and various politicians in response to this pandemic have defied logic. I challenge the school board of District 200 the following based off of my understanding that the district is taking its cue from the NCDH. A, to request the metrics related to contacts quarantined from school and the actual numbers of kids who tested positive or were ill from said contacts. B, contact the McHenry County Department of Health regarding the disparity of 3 feet versus 6 feet regarding contact tracing and push them to push for an exception or clarity from the IDPH, etc. C, request discussion with NCDH regarding masks and their efficacy, the need for our students to wear them all day, especially since viral size is not filtered by the surgical mask or cloth mask, and the requirement is to quarantine regardless if a mask is worn or not. D, request discussion with NCDH regarding an acceptable COVID test to return back to school earlier than the 14-day requirement for contact quarantine, including an appropriate time interval to test after contact. And E, I ask that this process be done in a fair and transparent way regarding the public. Sincerely, Annette Friels.
Alden? Thank you, Felix, and thank you to the people who submitted their comments.
John, is it?
Okay, no, that's going in last.
I can respond to that just quickly too. You know, we can definitely work on our messaging. What we need to message though is the facts that following public health protocols and when vaccinated students will not be quarantined. I think we have to be careful and absolutely in our messaging that we message that without, it's not mandatory. I don't think it's going to be mandatory. It's not mandatory in the district. I wouldn't recommend that. But I don't want a lot of people have to be able to tell them the truth that when you're vaccinated, you no longer are quarantined as a close contact. So I think we're trying to balance both those things.
Thank you. Good board. Okay, I don't see any members of the public, which is why I skipped it, but does anybody wish to address the board at this time? If then the public comment section is closed, we'll move on to staff comments. Are there any staff comments? Any board comments?
Yes. I'd like to say I lost a good friend and Marty Sobchak, who coached at Woodstock High School cross country for I think 26 years. He just passed away. Marty was a remarkable man. He cared as much about the last kid as the best kid. And he's had some really good kids. And there wasn't a kid that ever, or a runner that ever didn't like Marty and didn't learn from Marty. He really influenced a lot of people. He was a remarkable man. So Marty left us last week. That's all.
Thank you, Bruce. Are there any other board comments? Okay, then we'll move on to our superintendent's report.
Yes, we're in the final part of the school year here now that we're in May. AP testing started. Our social distance graduations and other activities are planned. Will be taking place over the next few weeks between now and the end of the school year. So we're really excited about ending the school year on a real positive note and getting started to next school year. We've already registered for the next school year. It's up for parents to get that back in. We're really excited about starting in August. We're still awaiting final guidelines from the state and requirements for remote and in-person learning. Obviously currently the vast majority of our students are in person, and we plan for that along with a mandatory remote option that we would believe from the state at some point in the near future. And once we have final guidelines, we'll share them with the board and have a plan for your approval.
Thank you. Okay, we have no unfinished business, so our next item of business is a new business, and it begins with canvass of the board election results. Okay, starting the board election results are found on page 43 of our materials. Election results as received from the county clerk are attached. The board members should review the results by comparing the precinct tallies with certified results. Total ballot votes received by each candidate will be stated publicly. The total number of votes for Jacob Holmuth were 913. For Carl W. Gilmore were 940. For Bruce Ferris were 1,077. And for John D. Parisi were 923. The results were certified by the precincts are listed, and the results are certified by the county clerk. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the election? Now, there's no action to be taken. We're just required to identify the number of votes publicly, which we've done. So that concludes our canvass of board member election results. The next item then would be the approval of the health safety life safety resolution for Northwood Middle School intercounty care.
So the intercom public address system at Northwood is failing, and we contacted our architects, the Regional Office of Education and the State Board of Education. And the quickest way to get the system repaired is to do an emergency board resolution. So ISB has already approved the repair under health life safety rules as an emergency. So the next step is for the board to approve the resolution that's in the agenda tonight. And then once we get that approval, we can get the parts ordered and hopefully get the repairs done by mid. And then the next step, which just seems odd, is we actually then have to bring this back again at the next meeting as a regular life safety amendment. I don't know why the state does that, but that's the process when it's an emergency. So you'll see this on the agenda again.
Okay, does anybody have any questions regarding the life safety resolution? If not, there's a suggested motion on page 47 of your material for a board vote.
Move to approve the use of life safety funds in a health life safety emergency board resolution to repair the intercom system at Northwood Middle School.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Holmes, seconded by Mr. Parisi. Roll call, please.
Mr. Holmuth,
Yes.
Mr. Parisi,
Yes.
Mr. Headley,
Yes.
Dr. Ferris,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes. Okay. Are there committee reports? The committee's met or have any reports for the last meeting? All right then. Next item on our agenda then is the oath of office for the new board. And as 4 of us are being administered the oath of office, that leaves Mr. Headley as being our administrator. So I guess what we'll do is we'll stand up. We'll go up here in the well and you can administer the oath to the board member.
Okay, so board member oath. I.
Will you raise your right hand, please, and be sworn? I, Carl Gilmore,
John Parisi, do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of Board of Education of Woodstock Community Unit School District 200.
that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of the member of the Board of Education of Woodstock Community Unit School District 200
In accordance with the Constitution of the United States.
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States,
The Constitution of the State of Illinois.
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
And the laws of the State of Illinois.
and the laws of the State of
To
Illinois,
the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear that.
I further swear that
I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of school district's assets.
I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek to hear before the board.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board,
While respecting the privacy of students and employees.
while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by majority vote at the public board meeting.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in District 200.
As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district.
I shall foster with the board's extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Woodstock Community Unit District 200.
I shall foster with the board extensive participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Woodstock Community Unit to School District 200.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential for a sound organizational framework.
I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework.
I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all the conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law.
I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement and all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law.
I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision of Woodstock Community Unit School District 200, and
I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision of Woodstock Community School District 200. And
I shall strive to work together with District Superintendent to lead the school district towards fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board has created, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations to the board members. Thank you, John, for that very long stepping in. Okay, at this point then, the old board is concluded, and we will move into our new board. We will need to do what's called an adjournment sine die. I'll ask for you to make a motion to adjourn sine die, and then we will reconvene in just a moment.
So moved.
You got a motion to adjourn sine die by Mr. Parisi, seconded by Mr. Holmes. Roll call, please.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Holmuth?
Yes.
Mr. Headley?
Yes.
Dr. Ferris?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore?
Yes. Okay. All right. This is the organization organizational meeting of the Board of Education of Woodstock Community Youth School District 200 of May 4th, 2021. We have a roll call, please.
Dr. Bidwell, Dr. Ferris,
Present.
Mr. Gilmore,
Here.
Mr. Headley,
Here.
Mr. Homewood,
Present.
Mr. Maselli, Mr. Parisi,
Here.
Okay, first item of business is nomination of President Pro Tempore, also known as President Pro Tem. Mr. Parisi, I believe at this point the floor is yours.
Okay, I'll accept any nominations for President Pro Tem.
I nominate Jacob Holmes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any other nominations?
Sorry, who was second?
Mr. Headley.
Thank you.
Any other nominations, looking for a roll call? Sorry, we'll say.
Mr. Gilmore,
Here.
Mr. Headley,
Yes, I'm sorry, that was yes.
Yes.
Dr. Ferris,
Yes.
Mr. Homewood,
Yes.
Mr. Parisi,
Yes.
Okay, Jacob, this is yours.
Okay, so this time I'd like to take nominations for the, we're gonna move into the election of officers of the board, so nominations, I'll open the floor for nominations for president of the board.
I would like to nominate Charles Gilmore.
Second?
Any other nominations? At this time, roll call?
Dr. Ferris,
Yes.
Mr. Parisi,
Yes.
Mr. Homewood,
Yes.
Mr. Headley,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes. Thank you. Next, I'm going to take nominations for the office of Vice President. I would nominate Jacob Homewood.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Gilmore, seconded by Mr. Parisi. Any other nominations? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Parisi,
Yes.
Mr. Homewood,
Yes.
Dr. Ferris,
Yes.
Mr. Headley,
Yes.
And congratulations, Mr. Homewood. Next item then would be the nominations for the office of Secretary. I will nominate John Parisi as Secretary.
Second.
And we have a nomination by Gilmore, seconded by Headley. Any other nominations? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes.
Mr. Headley,
Yes.
Mr. Parisi,
Yes.
Mr. Homewood,
Yes.
Dr. Ferris,
Yes.
Okay, congratulations. Our new officers are our old officers, Charles Gilmore, Jacob Homewood, and John Parisi. That concludes our election of officers. We'll move into our consent agenda. There is no addendum, although I do understand there are some considerations regarding the schedule.
Yeah. We had released the schedule for the establishment of dates and times, and then I think a request came in from the community to try to get off the same, on the months where we have one meeting, we're on the same schedule as city council, and I think someone has suggested we try to get off that. So we revised the schedule that you have in front of you that does that, and every month except November. In November, if we go to there's the options if you're not going to go to third or go, I think it's 2 or 4. 2 is too early for the fiscal department, so 4 is our option. In the months that we only have one. But if you go 4 in November, you're same week of Thanksgiving, which we want to stay away from. So we did the 4th week of every month in which we're doing a single meeting except November for Thanksgiving. So you can either approve the original or you can approve the revised copy. It's up to the board. We want to give you that option.
Okay, so there's a suggested motion on page 1 of our materials. I ask you to identify whether if you are making a motion, I ask you to identify whether you're suggesting the original schedule or the alternate option for the schedule. Other than that is really pretty much our consent agenda. So, do I have a motion?
establish the meeting schedule alternate option.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Parisi, Mr. Holman, seconded by Mr. Parisi. Roll call, please.
Mr. Homewood,
Yes.
Mr. Parisi,
Yes.
Dr. Ferris,
Yes.
Mr. Headley,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes. Okay, then that leaves on our agenda our closed session. It's a rather lengthy thing we're talking about, but I'm going to ask somebody to make a motion identifying specifically what's in the purpose of the closed session as stated in our materials. So would somebody please make a motion?
Move to go into closed session for the purposes of discussing consideration of executive session minutes to be made available to the public, consideration of executive session audio recordings to be destroyed, collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employer or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Motion by Mr. Parisi, seconded by Mr. Headley. Roll call, please.
Mr. Parisi,
Yes.
Mr. Headley,
Yes.
Dr. Ferris,
Yes.
Mr. Homewood,
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore,
Yes. Okay, we are in closed session.
Yes.